All right. Ritesh, welcome to my first business.
Thank you very much, Naeem.
I want to talk to you about 70 different things. I don't have the time.
I was expecting 85, but it's okay.
I know. I don't think this is
I'll survive.
I don't think this is the only time we'll have conversations like this. Before we started recording, I told you why I do this.
Yep.
And I think it's really important for people to learn from other people's mistakes
Sure.
and failures and successes as well. And the reason I wanted to have you on is that you have a wealth of this. And every time I've spoken to you, there's been nuggets of just your philosophy on how you look at things that I think I can dissect if I go into it and find some motivation for my next action or next action step, or at least be prepared. But before we get into all that wisdom and my admiration for you, why don't you tell the guests and the audience in a short, brief way who you are,
Sure.
what you do, if you meet someone at a party, who is Ritesh?
Sure. Firstly, that was a super flattering introduction. Thank you very much. I hope I can do some justice to whatever you end up asking me, and I hope I don't sound...
No pressure.
None at all. No. And honestly, I really appreciate you inviting me over, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I was telling you, I've never done anything like this before. So hopefully it's... It sounds cool in my head when I'm thinking about things. Hopefully they come out sounding equally interesting for you and I guess whoever's listening.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah. For just a quick, maybe a quick introduction about myself. I was actually born in India, it's Mumbai now, but Bombay back then. Moved to Dubai in 1989. So I'm a Dubai kid in that sense. Went to school here, finished high school in Dubai, went to the US for my undergrad, and came back post my undergrad because of reasons we'll probably get into during the podcast. And then I've been here since. So I've been back in Dubai working for about 14 years now. Mm-hmm. Currently spend a lot of time between Dubai and Mumbai, largely for work and also some family there. From a family perspective, like I said, my parents are here. My lovely wife, Upasna, who I met at uni in the US, also moved back to Dubai about 5 years ago. So we're just living our best life in Dubai as best we can, enjoying ourselves and doing what we do.
And how do you define yourself professionally?
So from a professional perspective, I'm actually part of my family business, which is into shipping and logistics. The organization is called the Transworld Group. It was founded in 1977 by my grandfather in India. Actually, he was working in Kuwait in the 60s for a shipping company, a Palestinian gentleman based out of Kuwait in, I think, 63 or 64. As luck would have it, one of the principles that they were representing, so they were shipping agency company. So normal agency, you work for someone else's business. And they wanted to start a service connecting India through the Gulf. So their ships used to come to Kuwait and I think maybe even Port Rashid in Dubai at the time and turn back and go to wherever Europe or wherever they came from. So they had an interest in some cargo from India. So his boss, gentleman by the name of Abdullah Muwakid, said, Swami, you're a nice guy. Why don't you go and start? I'll support you. Take the business over and take the business for India. And good luck. And you do what you can out of it. So that's literally how the organization started in 77. That agency lasted for about 6 months. As things do, I guess, when you're a new startup, you think you can take on more than you can chew. And more often than not, you do end up failing. But I guess the smartness that he had was to learn from it and move forward and build an organization from there. So that's how we started as a small shipping agency company in 77. And today, as an organization, we employ about 800, 850 people on land. We have about 600 people or crew that work for us on our ships. So we own our own ships. We own our own containers in different places that we operate. It could be on the land side with warehouses, trucks, and other such related items for the logistics and supply chain business.
Wonderful. I'm going to come back to your grandfather's story a bit later in the conversation because I think it does tie into a bit of the theme of the podcast. But I want to start with your genesis into the business. At what point did you enter the family business? Was it after graduation, or were you
Yeah.
testing the waters before too?
No, so it's kind of linked to what I said earlier. I kind of wanted to come back. Firstly, I was never under any pressure to say, like, this is the business and you need to come back and you need to be back by X day and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't think there was ever a conversation at home. Probably subconscious, but it wasn't a in your face kind of, you have to do this kind of conversation.
So talk to me about that. Like, tell me a bit more about that, because the expectation is that there's 2 generations have already passed in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Is it kind of a given that you will be there? What is there pressure?
So honestly, no.
Okay.
I think it's just the way my parents are. I guess I think that's how we were always brought up, and they're very similar even now. I think it's more about they set kind of guidelines and you pick and choose what you think is right, and then they back you, and they've consistently done that. For example, I actually went into undergrad. I'm sorry, I'm jumping a bit, but
You
went into undergrad as a communications major. I started off as a comm major. I realized it bores me about 6 months into it. And then I switched and I ended up with operations management and a couple of minors, one of them in communication and one in organizational behavior. So actually started off doing something completely different. I wanted to be a lawyer for the longest time. So there were a lot of these things that I was never under any pressure to come back and work. But actually what happened was 2007 and 8 happened, or the financial crisis happened. So when that happened, it was very similar to most industries and most businesses across the world. There was a complete bloodbath, right? Shipping was no different. Just to give you an example, so we earn in freight rates. So freight rates went up, a hypothetical number, say $100 a container today. And by this evening, or like 9 a.m., $100. By the evening, it was about $2 a container, $10 a container if you were lucky.
It's like the FX market.
Exactly. So that happened, and the industry was in a huge amount of turmoil. We were no different from everybody else. So at that point was when I was just about graduating in the US. I had interviewed in a couple of places. US was also going through challenging times, so that really didn't go anywhere. And then my father's like, listen, you can learn whatever you can learn now, you'll never get an opportunity to do it again. So come, spend some time, just be here, see what you can pick up. If you like it, stay back. If you don't like it, fair enough. My wife was in the US. My now wife was in the US at the time. So obviously I had motivation to go back. But then I just thought that it was, one, I liked it. Two, and I think it was a bit of a moral dilemma that I had. But I chose to be here and also support my father and the family, because things were not as rosy as probably they are now. I think that was one of the toughest periods from a business perspective that we went through as well.
That actually leads to my second question. When you did join, 2 questions, you have to answer them from 1 to 10.
Sure.
How stable was the business? 10 being the most stable. And secondly, what was the potential that you, in your gut or intuition, how much of the potential was already realized in the business? As in, there's no more room for growth. It's just maintenance from here on. So let's talk about stability first. How stable was it? And you can't pick 7. Seven is a cop out. It's either 6 or 8. So how stable was it at that time?
So there was a period of time, it was a 4. I would say 3 or 4.
Okay.
It was a very short period of time, but it was definitely exceptionally on a really, really sticky wicket for some short period of time. But then as things do, you put your head down and you figure it out, and slowly but surely. But it was a good 2-3 years that were really a huge struggle. And then, of course, things started settling down, and not just from a market perspective, but in terms of certain strategies, certain decisions that we took ended up paying off or have started to pay off then.
Yeah, we'll talk about those stories a bit more in detail. What about the potential? What did you see at that point?
So because we're in different aspects of the supply chain and different aspects of the shipping and logistics business, as an organization, different parts of the businesses were in different stages of growth. Some of them were older businesses or the original businesses, which were, I don't want to say plateauing, but they were reaching a point of slower growth than maybe some of the others. So there's a mixed bag. I think there were certain things that we definitely had clear growth plans and ambitions, which I think we've kind of hit our straps and are fulfilling them now. Certain other parts of the business that were getting to a mature stage, we've also found ways to find the best way possible to take them forward as well in those businesses. So it was a mixed bag, but definitely potential. It wasn't, honestly, if it was just come here, sit down and have, do nothing and just watch it happen, I don't think I would have interested me. I would have probably found a polite way of maybe backing out and doing something else.
Yeah. How old were you at the time where you officially joined?
It's a great question. 22, I want to say.
22.
Yeah,
okay,
I think so.
It's a very precarious age. The reason I ask is that if you
22, sorry, I was just counting. Sorry, you're 22.
If you ask 22-year-olds now, they have no idea what to do with their life, right? Because of the barrage of information that's at them and the potential of their life. And you kind of alluded to that. You're doing comms major, you wanted to be a lawyer, you wanted to keep your options open.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the fate kind of brought you into this place. But I wanted to ask you, once you made the decision, okay, let's try this.
Sure.
What expectations did you set for yourself? Or what expectations did you set of the environment that you're going to get?
Expectations from myself. So because of, the scenario, the way the business was, and there was also a lot of other things, I don't want to dwell on them too much, but there are a lot of different things happening within the business and the family and all of that stuff. So the initial goal and objective was just to be there, to be a sounding board, to of course learn, because I didn't, of course, dinner table conversations growing up, but you don't know till you learn. So firstly, shut up, listen, be a sounding board and pick up whatever you can and try and just, try to not annoy people, be there, but just try and observe more than anything else. So that was the first, maybe expectation I set on myself, was be there to support my father, to support the rest of the family and business, however I could. It could mean, cracking a joke more than once a day. I don't know, whatever. It could be something as stupid as that, but that is a general idea. I'm simplifying it, but that's the general idea. And the second one was just to absorb. Again, I went into it because what my dad said, never going to be like this. Trust me, just come in and learn.
Yeah.
And that's literally what I was doing. So I had I was not customer facing. No one knew I existed. I literally started from ground up to I know I sound very privileged, and I can hear myself saying it, and I want to acknowledge that. When I say, I started from ground up, I acknowledge that it's from a privileged position that I'm saying I started, in quotes, ground up. But from our organization perspective, I started ground up. And it basically stayed out of the limelight and focus for at least 3, 4, 5 years. And then I slowly stepped into more of a senior role within the organization, eventually now where I am as, within the management and in the senior management team for the organization.
Yeah, I don't think it sounds privileged personally. I mean, people might disagree with me. People might disagree with you as well. I have my reasons. We'll get into that a bit later as well. I find so we were talking before this, I was in finance, right? I did financial foreign exchange trading for about 7 years, and I had to switch careers. And I was at a point where I know what I didn't want to do, wasn't sure what I wanted to do.
Sure.
So the advice that I was getting at that point was similar to what you're saying, is just go and learn and absorb. What's open for you? What's the closest thing that can get you to your learning goals?
Sure.
And I switched into tech, and again, people would say like it's privileged. I got a good position in tech, which was from the ground up customer service, which is not fancy. For someone making 6 figures a year to go into customer service, my parents were like, what are you doing? It was like 3 months after I got married. So they're like, what are you doing? Yeah. Here we are hoping for grandkids, and you are completely going and throwing it all away. Yeah. But there's something to that kind of attitude, just to absorb and to learn. I totally understand what that means. And then if you're always expecting a certain, that's why I asked about expectations. If you're always kind of holding yourself to these strong worded affirmations, expectations, do you really find your own path or not?
Yeah, I think you have to, see, each one goes through their own journey, right? And I strongly believe, regardless of where you start off, where you end up is basically your own journey, right? You can get some advantages or lots of advantages. You can be maybe no advantages as a starting point. But I think a lot of people get into their own head a bit, and they try and overthink and over everything things. But I think you just look around you, take a second. So I always get into this with my father. Actually, he thinks I'm sometimes not serious enough, or I don't look at things a certain way. But I actually think it's not the worst thing to step back a little bit, to observe your surroundings, to see what's going on, and then choose how you need to go, rather than just being regimented and being, this is what it is. I've heard that to be a great business person, you need to wake up at 5 and go to the gym and so I'm going to do this. No. I think you need to figure out your own kind of masala mix, or your own formula to how you do it. I don't know if I answered your question. But
no, it does. It's all about, so the thing that is on my mind a lot these days is finding your own truth.
Yeah.
What's true to you.
Sure.
And you mentioned overthinking.
Yeah.
That actually is a great segue into my next topic, but I think we have coffee.
Super.
Okay, break over.
Yes, let's go.
So we were talking about overthinking, and expectations, and having hard goals and stuff like that. I wanted to talk to you about planning in particular.
Yeah.
As a business owner, it's been 2 years now. Still trying to find my style of managing the business. I'm still trying to understand how far do I need to plan out. And this would be a good contrast to talk to you as a 3-generation business versus something that's 2 years old, and we can compare notes.
Sure.
I can't plan more than 90 days at a time. I can't plan my actual tasks for more than 2 weeks at a time, and I can't plan my goals more than 90 days at a time. Is that the same how you guys do it, or must be very different?
It's a hybrid. I think you need to plan short, medium, long-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, actually why I'm traveling to India, to Mumbai again on Sunday. And one of the things we're doing, so we turn 50 as an organization in 4 years. So that's actually our next Transworld at 50. And that's our business plan and our strategy and roadmap, high level, for the next 5 years. And then, of course, you break it down into smaller chunks, smaller goals. I don't know if 90 days is a window, but I don't think it's not bad to have smaller windows and break them down into more achievable targets. But I still think you need a mix, because if you do, at least my perspective, and I think it is different from an organization that's been around versus a startup, because there's so many things that come your way and you don't know how to predict them. But I still feel maybe if you have some sort of a long-term roadmap, it can be very macro. It doesn't have to be micro detailed, but at least you know in what direction you're shooting. Because at least my experience has been, and we were never like this, I think, in the past, because it was just, let's do something, let's do this, let's do that. But the last almost now 10 years, so we did one 5 years ago, and I looked at it to prepare for the one from next week. We achieved about 70% of what we set out to, which is interesting, because I was shocked that we achieved as much as we did. But then that also now gives us that 30% plus what next. So it's a nice way of kind of doing it. And then, of course, that breaks down into smaller plans and quarterly plans and budgets and all of that.
And do you think the factor that you have had success before, so in multiple lines of businesses, kind of now you have stories to rely on, like, this is something that's possible, doable, we've tried this. Does that make planning easier for the way forward?
100%. Like I'm saying it now and in my head, and I know, just speaking from shared experience of, say, my wife's business, and she's a new business as well. Sometimes I tell her something and she thinks I'm completely batshit crazy, because I'm like, how can you think of blah, 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 but it doesn't work. And I've now realized that it is very, very different. And it's, again, because we know something has worked, we've done it a certain way, so we just assume that that's what it's like. But I also think there's no one way. I think I'm just, again, hearing myself. There's probably no one right way. I think you need to find what works for you. But I guess even in life, it's a bit philosophical, but you do need like some general direction, right? Like, in 5-10 years, I want to live in Dubai. I want to do something within media.
Absolutely.
And then you figure out, figure out the rest, and you take it as it comes.
I told you this was going to be a therapy session, not just a podcast, right? Because these are things that are hard to talk about in generic catch-up kind of situations. But there's a lot of things that overlap between how you look at life and how you look at business. So I absolutely believe
I agree
that you should have a direction that you're going towards. But what I think is lacking for us, and something that I'm working on, or we're working on, making that long-term roadmap. visualizing it without ever having done anything similar.
Yeah.
So the inspiration has to come from stories of others.
Yeah.
At this point. So we look up to, let's say, similar businesses, other
Sure.
agency owners that do advertising. What have they accomplished?
Sure.
How did they do it? Is that a goal that will give us stress or will give us joy?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that we need to balance, because not all goals are joyful. Not all of them are stressful.
Sure.
They're somewhere in between. It just depends on how much you want to push yourself. How would you describe your level of push and aggression into business? 1 out of 10, again, you can't pick 7, and 10 being the most aggressive.
So it's really interesting. Maybe I'm similar in personal life. So I'm generally very laid back, but if I have to get something done, I can go from 0 to 100 like this, right? And I just need to find that one either trigger or something that motivates me to do it, and then I'm on it, and I'm quite aggressive in terms of how I go about it. Definitely more than I am in real life, more in business than in life. But even in life, I can go just, if you'll see me, we're meeting tomorrow, and you'll see in a competitive situation, I can get very, very competitive. You'll see.
I can already imagine that.
No, but yeah.
But tell me about some of the triggers. What are the triggers that get you going from 0 to 100 real quick?
From a work perspective, or
from a work perspective.
Someone tells me it can't be done, or someone says that, and I'm thinking as an organization says you're only doing this, you're old, whatever, you're only this, you're only that. If I even hear that, I think that just motivates me to, can I be a little rude?
Yeah.
And kind of, a big FU to whoever. So I think that kind of gets me going.
So you're
because
competitive.
I guess I am competitive in that. And it's not just to prove someone wrong, don't get me wrong, that's not the motivation. But that does help you to catalyze a lot of the things and push it towards that direction.
Have you always been competitive?
Certain times. I honestly, I'm such a, Ayush, my wife will tell you, I can be sitting on the couch for the entire weekend, do nothing, and be very happy with it. Or I can go out and do something and be ultra gung-ho about doing it, be super enthusiastic, and I live in those extremes, I think. There's no in between. I'm either like super laid back, or if I have to, then I'm okay, fine, let's go and get it done.
The reason I'm smiling so wide and I'm getting into this is like, it's very similar for me, but it's very hard to explain also in different stages of life.
I think so.
I think mine has evolved. I don't know if yours has. So I started mostly been laid back to a point where I look lazy, but I'm not lazy.
Thank you. Yep. Yeah.
I am able to do things fast. Like my mom told me the other day, she's like, your sisters were always complaining about you when you were a kid.
Right.
Because they'd be studying all day. You'd study an hour at night and you'd get more results from them. And I'd look very laid back.
Yeah.
But the moment that, something needs to be done.
Yeah.
And then second thing is games and competition, right? So Alina used to laugh at me, my wife and business partner, that I play to play the game. She's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And I was like that. I wouldn't care about winning for the longest time. It only changed in the last 5 years or so that I would be sulking after a loss. Whether it's a board game, a football game that I play, my team loses. I used to be very zen, but something has changed.
I agree with you. It's really interesting that you said that. And I think it's very similar for me. Like if you look at how I was growing up, and I did sports and I did all of that, but it was always like, okay, fine, I need to run. Okay, I'm going to run 100 meters. Okay, I'm doing this. Okay, I won a medal. Oh, I came last. Oh, whatever. Okay, whatever. But you're right. I think something has changed even for me. And it's been in the last maybe 5-6 years where, and maybe it's work that's made me more competitive off work, just because of whatever things we want to achieve from a work perspective. I think that's also pushed me to change a little bit from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, even with friends, it's probably there's always a one guy or one girl in the group that annoys you so much you want to do it just to shut them up. So I think that also, so maybe it's going back to the, sticking it to someone for saying something. Maybe that is just and it's a very, very small, petty thing, I know. but it helps. It just kind of eggs you on, pushes you. So maybe
it's important for people around you to know that, because if they want to get something done by you, or all you have to know your own triggers as well, right?
Sure.
Because yes, as a business owner and like leading a business, you don't need extra accountability. Everything depends on you.
Sure.
The results will have a direct impact on you.
100%.
It's not like you can just go start another job the other day.
100%.
Right? Like you are responsible for everything that happens. So you already have the accountability.
Yeah.
But then there's this next level. This is why I bring up aggression, because that's where you do things that, you wouldn't coast. You wouldn't rely on coasting, and you need those triggers somehow. And I constantly am looking for my triggers as well. I don't have the F you tell me I can't do it, Rage Against the Machine kind of stuff in me right now. Mine is more, if nobody can do it, I'll show you how I'll do it. Like it's one of those things, like if you can't figure it out, if it's too hard for you, I'll show you that it's easy.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's similar-ish to the Rage Against the Machine thing, but I get exactly what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
It is this like something that you want to prove to yourself, and in doing that, I guess you can prove to the others, even if you don't have to, but it allows you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to planning, we talked about long term.
Yeah.
How does you wear so many different hats in your business, right?
Yeah.
How many hats do you wear?
Yeah, a few. Yeah, a bunch of things.
64, 75. So how do you plan day to day? What does your day to day planning look like?
Actually, I live on my calendar pretty much. So I do plan. So I plan my day out pretty well, and I'm not like, but I kind of have an idea what I want to get out of every day.
My day before or on the day of?
Day off, I spend some time in the morning just kind of thinking through it. And largely now, because everything is governed by meetings and calendars and all of that, so you kind of know what to expect. But I do make sure that at least one day of the week is time for me. It could be housekeeping, it could be just catching up with my colleagues, getting a cup of coffee. You'll find, so in my office, I'm the annoying guy that just keeps walking around and chatting with people. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And then it's like quote unquote work time as well. But no, I am fairly planned in terms of how I go about each day. But that's more just to keep me from slacking than anything else, I think.
Do you have a portion of deep work in your days where you actually need to shut off from everyone and focus on yourself?
Sometimes. Sometimes. I think it's not very often, but it does come up, especially like for this that I'm preparing for next week. That's actually most of Sunday. So I'm traveling Sunday, but most of the day, even on the flight, is going to be just collecting my thoughts and thinking through a lot of what the expectations are, what expectations to set, and all of that. So I do that once in a while, but largely it's very collaborative. Again, I think that's probably also my way of doing things. So I do need discussions. We have people around, and it's a lot of the decisions are taken. There's no me taking a decision or anything. I think it's a lot of group thinking. Of course, I take a final call if I have to, but it's after deliberation and getting everyone's view. So maybe that's just how I do it. But yeah, that's just.
So let's talk about that. So good segue. People.
Yeah.
You can try and automate everything in the world, but like we've been trying to do it since the steam engine, since we can't remove people from business. No. What was your first experience actually hiring someone for yourself, someone who you would be directly working with? And could you compare what you're looking for in people from that time to today? And how has that changed or evolved in the way you procure people, what you want to know about them, how you check your gut feelings? Yeah. What's your current analysis of people and how to bring them on board with you?
I don't know if too much has changed. Of course, I mean, skill set wise, you need more, people should understand a bit more about technology and have some experience and those sort of things. That's fine. But I think it's more about the personality of the person. I'm not saying you must like everyone that you work with. You need people that are different. You need people to challenge and question. That's fine. But there's still a little bit of that underlying personality trait that you kind of need to gel. So I don't know if it's changed too much from then to now. So the way I interview people is actually quite, I don't know if it's unique, but I've read your CV, I've read your resume, I know that. But I literally just sit down and have a conversation. And I've had people like my last head of HR, our last head of HR. She just moved back to India, and she's working with another large organization there. Basically, ended her interview with me saying that she's actually lazy, and she works.
You're
smart.
like hired.
Yeah, no, I was like, yes. And she literally ended, and she said it, and she just looked at me and said, shit. And literally her reaction, I'm like, why? What happened? She's like, should I have said that I'm lazy? I'm like, no, but what do you mean? And she ended up like similar to what you said, or what I said, no, it's more about working smart. Of course, I have to work and I get things done, but it's not like I'm not the person who's running. And I find that sort of stuff is what you really understand about a person, right? If you just go to someone and be like, tell me about yourself, they'll just be like, okay, I did this, I worked here, I did this, this is a skill set. Yeah, but so what? Everyone around you has got, give or take, the same amount of skills, give or take, same amount of qualifications, depending on the role. But until you really understand the person behind all of that, I think that's what sets, and that's the magic, right? And like you said, like you started off saying, even our industry, like we've had companies very, very large, largest in the world, pure shipping companies that have gone completely digital. You pick up the phone, you don't get anyone. You can't meet them in their office because they don't exist. Everything is either online. Technology is great. We're using a lot of it. It's all fine. But, and I think this has come from my father. It's one of his teachings that I take, and maybe it's from his dad, I don't know. The backbone of at least our organization is our people. Whatever you do is basically to enhance their way of working and to give a better customer experience. That's fine. But it's not at the cost of people. And for that, you need a certain type of person that really understands that philosophy and it really fits into the culture of the organization. Like for me, personally, I think the culture of the organization is key. So when I look and meet someone, it's that, and I think it's intangible. You can't really define, you can, but it's not that easy to put into words. But there's that.
And you shouldn't.
Something.
I don't think you should, because then you kind of constrict it.
Correct.
Or restrict it.
Correct.
If you try to put it in words.
Correct.
Then you become that thing. It's in that box.
Exactly. And if you look, and it's really weird because we have had, senior level hires that have been great human beings, great on paper, but there's, with due respect, there's maybe just something that didn't fit.
Yeah.
And maybe they felt it as well. Right. And a lot of us, again, there are people who challenge each other all the time. There's no like sitting there and just agreeing, but it's still within a way of, and there's just, I think that makes a huge difference in terms of how the organization moves forward as well.
Yeah.
I've kind of rambled on a bit, but sorry.
No. I'm taking all of that in and tying it to my experiences and seeing how to go about it in the future too. So like backstory first.
Yeah.
Every time I've been successful at getting a job in my 9-to-5 career, I realized the inflection point in the interview was when it went away from just skills and things you can put in words to a more emotional, or I would say like, what's your damn motivation, man? Like somebody asked me that in a different way. Like,
correct.
What do you wake up for, and what do you stand for? What is your philosophy, basically? And at that point, the interview just changes, and I knew if I had the job or not before I even got the offer. And I'm trying to replicate that now with hiring. I am not sure how those managers triggered that. Yeah. So how do you trigger that? How do you trigger those kind of underlying philosophy, motivation of a person? Do you have any questions in there or any specific thing that you can point to that brings that piece of them out?
I think just talk to them. Like, again, I think a lot of people who are interviewing people are just, again, I'm in the middle of, 100 things and here someone slotted in a 20-minute slot for an interview. Honestly, if you really want to hire the person, first, you should care about the reason you're hiring them and care about the person that you want to bring on board enough to just have a conversation. It's like this. We're just speaking to each other. And that's literally, there's no like set of questions. There's nothing, because I could ask about something completely random. Please don't do that. I could go off the rails a bit. Please don't do that. But no, it's just having a conversation. I don't know. I just like to talk to people. Yeah. I don't know. And it's nice to hear a bit about someone else's story, right? It's also, I think empathy is that the fancy word? I don't know.
Potentially. Well, see, the other way I'm thinking about it, correct me if I'm wrong, is energy too. You want to find if people match your energy level. So our company has two heads, myself and Alina.
Yeah.
We operate in different energies.
Yeah.
Hers is a bit more very attention to detail, very task focused, very deadline focused, very structured in her way of like working. And then there's this guy who wears a Homer Simpson t-shirt. So we try to find people that either can match hers mostly, because most of the work, most of the service delivery of the clients is upon her.
Right.
So we need people that are supporting her that match that level of energy, that care about speed and they care about attention to detail and they care about her truth, which we talked about before as well. Yeah. And you can only get that, as you're saying, through kind of conversation.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think you've said it really, really well. It is about that, right? And if you're not able to gel at that level, forget everything else.
Yeah.
Because I think then everything else just falls in place.
Yeah.
But if these are like very basic, if you don't match from energy perspective, if you don't match from whatever, these small, perspectives of different things, whatever it is, right? I'm not saying, again, you don't have to agree on everything. You can have different political views. You can have all of that. Doesn't really matter at all. But it's about certain, again, I don't know how to say it.
Style.
Yeah, maybe it's style.
Style of work.
Yeah. Maybe it's that.
Because like for sports teams, right? Like you can get two superstars working in the same team, but they might not gel with each other because they operate in different energies. But individually, they're both great.
Yeah.
So when a person doesn't pass the interview, it's not to say that they weren't a good catch. It's just that you and I may not be on the same wavelength. Yeah. So I'm really glad that at least that part is similar.
Which is nice.
Whew. Okay, here I was. I'm constantly questioning and doubting everything.
And if it was up to me, I'd be wearing that t-shirt. No, I'm not this suit. So
I think you're coming from very important meetings.
Yeah.
Moving on to something that you alluded to before in passing, but I picked up on it, is thinking big. So we were talking about planning, and you were talking about your wife's business at the startup level.
Yeah.
And you're able to think bigger than maybe a startup can. What do you think people like us, your wife, myself, can do to cultivate big thinking? Is there something we need to be more open to? Is there some words you can say to inspire us? But what gets you to think so macro?
Yeah.
Without being fearful of like how it will be done?
Yeah, I actually think it's just that. The last bit that you said, if you start overthinking right at the beginning, then I think you just go into this loop of how do I get this done? What's going to happen? Da, 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 da. But I think it's also interesting and important to probably differentiate between something that is macro, and I'm only going to dream and put stupid shit on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard or whatever it is. We'll figure it out. We have to figure it out. And if it's not figure outable, we get rid of it. But just go with whatever's in your mind. And I think it's the fear of, or I think often, and I do this as well, we jump from figure out stage, hypothetical, let me figure it out, to holy shit, I need to figure it out. Oh my God, I can't figure it out in about 30 seconds. Which is, I get it. But I think find a way, or try, at least what I do is try and find a way to stop it. If I'm planning something, stop at that. Let me just put it and see what happens. Let it sit for a bit. Let it marinate. Let it marinate for a bit. More often than not, no, it's too stupid. It's not going to work, and we chuck it. One of them, or two or three out of 10, I don't know, whatever the number is, ends up being an idea that, okay, let's work with it a bit more. And then you flesh it out. And maybe of that 3, 1 sticks, 2 sticks, whatever, right? But I think somewhere, then this is what, I don't want to speak for her, but or you guys, but maybe that could be a catch. And I'm, again, probably the reason I'm allowed myself to be and think like that, because I have an existing business that, okay, if this doesn't work, I may still have something, or I could still pivot and do something else. Maybe it's that, and that confidence that I get because of having that. But it is a conscious effort that I make as well, to not jump from ideation stage to planning and then also failing your own plans and moving to something else. So I think there's that effort that at least I make all the time. If I have an idea, put it and let it sit. And I think decision making is, you have to be prompt. I completely agree. But for something like this, it actually doesn't kill you to take your time with it. Normal decisions, I think just you need to take a call, quick. My view, again, if I'm rambling, sorry, but
no.
Just decision making, quick decisions, have the guts to deal with the consequences of the decisions later, but don't sit on something and overanalyze and overthink, except for this part, which is a longer term view vision. Take some time with it.
Let it
sit.
Let it. So I have a tab on my software that I keep track of my tasks. I call it Incubate.
Okay. Yeah.
The issue that I deal with was part of my questions, the fear of like, how will I do it?
Yeah.
Because I am a very process-based thinker.
Right.
So when I do have an idea, I try to make it as tangible as possible, as quickly as possible to figure out if I need to move. Yeah. And that's where it gets killed. That's where most of my ideas don't even make it to that list.
The next stage,
because I've overthought, as you said, like, okay, this might take 4 years. In those 4 years, the first 2 years will be spent doing this. And for that, I need to hire this person. I need to learn this skill. And then by that time, it just feels so overwhelming that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Versus now that I'm glad you said that, because there are some times where I just write something down and leave it out there and mention it in passing to conversations here and there. It comes up in different conversations. And then you start seeing the truth to it. You're like, okay, that's not actually a very bad idea.
Yeah.
Or let's not do that again. Get that off your list because we found something that's a deal breaker.
So just a question quickly. So do you think that, what you said, you have an idea and it, and you kind of, let it float around, speak to someone about it. Do you find that you actually, like the universe, again, it sounds hokey as
No,
shit,
please. I'm totally into this stuff.
Does the universe kind of, give you a sign? Sometimes when you let things happen, you kind of get feedback. When you, put happy thoughts out there or a positive idea, do you get feedback from the world around you?
125%. Yeah. And only by, it's kind of the way for ideas to evolve is through some challenge with the outside world. The longer it stays in your head, it's defeated. As long as it's there, it'll be defeated.
Agree.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
But the more you put it out there, I've seen, and thanks for bringing that up because that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
That no matter how stupid an idea sounds, it needs to get out there to be tested in the first phase and then evolve as it needs to or die.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, this is good. I really appreciate that piece of advice because overthinking is, here's the thing. Small business, rule number 1 is survival.
Yeah.
Fix that. Don't worry about that because things like incubating ideas and also things like company culture, for example, are secondary to survival.
Yeah.
Once you've figured out survival, which luckily we have, now I'm starting to have these kind of conversations. What should our company culture be? What should, our 5-year, 4-year, what should incubate in there? What are the possibilities?
Yeah.
What's the potential? Now, if we can make this guy survive and we can step away and it'll still be running, the machine will still be running.
Yeah.
If we're there, then maybe go into the next thing. But luckily, we had a survival. Speaking of survival, we started the conversation talking about your genesis into the business. And at that point, the stability was in question.
Yeah.
So I want to spend some time talking about challenges, how you overcome them, and the lessons that, we can talk about in common language and people who are listening can kind of relate to it, even outside your industry. If there's some common threads of what you saw. But let's talk about one challenge that you've overcome and maybe some lessons from it. One that you're facing right now, if you're comfortable sharing anything from a high level. And one disaster that's coming, but you're already preparing for it, but it's not here yet or you're envisioning coming. So let's start with something in the past. What comes to mind? If you can describe what brought your business to that 4 out of 10 and what was required to get out of it.
So 4 out of 10 was just 2008. This is because I was working on the outside terrace 2 days in a row. All the sand is in my system.
Welcome to Dubai life.
Yeah. 4 out of 10 was actually just 2008 that got us there. But that's a nice way of putting it. But I think, so the industry we're in, so the traditional part of the business, the shipping business is really cyclical. It's always been super cyclical. The length of the cycles are changing. Today you have really, really short cycles. Back even 10, 15 years ago, the cycles were a little longer. And 2008 was probably the first mini or shorter length within the cycle. So that's what really shocked the entire system. And I think like most other similar companies, no one really expected it to be as bad as it was. We were talking about before we started about financial planning. You always plan, it makes so much sense now, but you always plan for the worst case scenario, plan for something that's really, really, really good, keep it on the side. And then you kind of figure out that you're in betweenish somewhere. You end up always in between. But for some reason, and I guess it was a lot of the world at that time, never really, really honestly planned out for the worst case scenario. Could you have really predicted it? Probably not, but at least let's think down that. And people don't want to, even personally. You never want to think, oh my God, what if XYZ really, really bad thing happens tomorrow morning? What do I do? You don't want to think about it. So that's something which, in hindsight, if we had the guts to, and again, it's not a commentary on what was right or wrong. What we did was right then. That is not a wrong, so that is something we're very clear about. But in hindsight, if I was to learn from it, probably the planning process and always try and look at super worst case and build up from there. And that's actually something that we've incorporated into the business very, very clearly. Of course, there was always certain scenario planning and stuff, but I think now we've really gone doomsday tomorrow versus what's going to happen. So that's something that's always on our mind. And essentially the way we overcame the challenge, and the challenge was whatever it was, from a market perspective, two was there were some so we're in the ship owning business, we were building new ships at the time. The value of the ships dropped rather dramatically, apart from the ongoing business issues at the time. And the way we did it was essentially just tough old school negotiations, tightening the belt, going back to the basics, getting closer to our customers. And again, it sounds super gimmicky, but it's literally that. It wasn't anything super fancy. It was literally going back to, okay, what the hell are we doing? Why are we doing it? And let's now figure it out. The other thing that really helped was having a great team around. There's so many examples of people that are still working with us in a lot of cases, went above and beyond to put their hands up, to come up with ideas, to sit, to discuss. And these are all, amazing learnings. Literally, there's a whole generation of us at Transworld who've learned all our lessons from that time, and we still always think about it today. Any decision that a lot of us have taken, that's still literally back of our mind. What if tomorrow morning 2008 and 9 happens? Okay, fine. Okay, it's not going to happen. Okay, now let's do this, or now let's do that. So I think going back to the basics, tightening our belt, having a great team around us to support decision making, to allow decision making to happen, to think about ideas, to think about different things. And very honestly, when you do, and again, back to this universe thing, I think when you do certain things and you do them with the right intent, somehow things work out. And I don't want to, again, underplay anything. It was really a lot of effort and all of that. But at the end of the day, you can do all that you can do, and then it's not in your hand. There's certain things that are controllable, work on them, and the rest is, we'll see. And if the stars align, so to speak, it works, right? So that's obviously something that I feel like it happens only because you're doing the right thing, or you're still putting the effort, or you're still working hard towards solving a problem or a challenge, and then eventually you might get a lending hand somehow.
Absolutely.
So it's a bit of all of that.
I think that intent piece that you talked about too, if you look at the counter of that, let's say there's a resignation within you.
Yeah.
And I know what you're saying is true for me, at least, because I know the counter example. Yeah. There has been times where I've been a bit more resigned about the situation, or Alina has, and the universe manifests that, because that's what we're putting out. Correct. We like it or not. So if that is true, then the other side is potentially true too. Yeah. And you have to work on maintaining that. And as you said, like having a great team was definitely a part of that, because we all kind of share the same energy when we're in the same room. So that's very interesting. So tightening your belt, going back to the basics, talking to the customers again, that's massive. That's huge. What are you facing right now? Is there some sort of challenge that you're kind of meditating through, or how to deal with it? Do you have a plan of something that you're working on that is solving a big problem?
Yeah, so I think the business is already, if not pivoting towards being. I think the expectations from a logistics company is very different from what it was even a couple of years ago. The next generation of customers are obviously more tech savvy. They expect certain things which probably a previous generation would have liked, but now it's a must-have. So it's how to pivot a 40-something-year-old business and future-proof it for the next 40 and beyond by using certain tools and technologies available. So we've invested a lot into a strong back end, and we've worked with Oracle over the last 3 years, and we've done all of that. And it's now the process where we're building out on rolling out customer-facing tools that allows them to have a better journey from their perspective.
Can I ask you, is the customers that asked for this, or you are guessing that the customers want this?
It's a mix. We've actually gone out and over the last few years worked with a core group of customers. We've done workshops with them. We've had them in steercos. So it's not just what we think the customer might want. It's actually with a lot of their inputs, which also means that there's onus on them to still use it and us. But no, it's been an effort where we've actually sat with them and tried to get some of the requirements. Of course, certain things were what we also believed made sense. So it's not completely just what we want to push, but it's getting feedback from them as well.
While you're building it.
Yeah, while we're building. So just in the process of rolling it out, we've started something about 3-6 months ago, and we're slowly adding on to that. But the idea is again to make their lives easier, use fancy sounding tech, but that stuff that's really easy, that's really logical. And the good thing is our industry is actually quite slow in terms of adapting to certain...
That's a good thing.
It's a great thing, right? So it's not like we're doing anything great. Honestly, I will separately tell you what we're doing, it sounds like it's the most basic thing in the world, but the industry doesn't do it. So why not?
Yeah.
We're also doing some stuff with Web3 and stuff as well. So there's a lot of interesting. So we're trying to basically leapfrog an entire generation within our tech and our tech stack of what we were doing versus what we want to do. So we're trying to push the envelope a little bit, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a bit of the journey now, and that's I think the biggest challenge for us. So one is customer facing, two is internally within the organization. How do you get people excited about the fact that things are going to be looking a little different?
Yep.
Maybe their roles will look and feel a little different. They'll still be there, but the expectations will definitely change. So I think that's also going on at the same time as rolling things out. It's also an internal discussion and internal battle on certain days. But so far, so good.
Yeah.
I'm still smiling. People are, I guess, still smiling. So it's in the right direction.
I think that's so exciting, man, because like you said, like you're switching, you're skipping a generation worth of work. So you could walk into Transworld 5 years from now and it'll be a completely different company.
Yeah. I honestly, that's one
processes, people, operations,
Yeah.
things have done, checklists and everything could be completely different.
Yeah.
While still upholding tradition.
Of course.
Of
course, that's not going to change. And that's one of the fundamental things, and I said it earlier as well. You can have processes, you can have IT and blah, blah, blah. Without people, that's you're not going to go anywhere, and that's our fundamental piece of the business.
Yeah, that's great, man. I wish you the best of luck because I know how exciting that feeling is because I'm getting that feeling. I'm like, whoa, that's going to change everything. Let's talk about mentors, guides, influences. Maybe there'll be a cameo about your grandfather in there as well. But who do you surround yourself with in terms of your own growth? Who's your sounding board now? Where do you get your advice from? What is the value that you personally derive from these kind of relationships, if you have?
Sure. So mentoring perspective, so I've always grown around very, very strong men and women actually. So maybe I'll start from my grandmom. So one of the first people, this is my mom's mom. She is 82 now. She actually ran her own restaurant in Bombay and a small hotel, like a 15-room hotel. And she was running it till about 10 years. Till about 10 years ago. And she did it essentially herself. Of course, with support from family, my granddad, and all of that. But she was a she was a one-woman army. My bad. She was a one-woman army, essentially doing that. So growing up, my memory of her is, yeah, okay, grandmom, and oh, so sweet, and this and that, whatever. But my memory of her was her running her business, and her having a team coming in every evening when I was in India, staying at her house. 4:30, she would have the team coming in with the books for the day. She would be sitting there and, checking everything, signing off, goes back, next day the same thing. I never understood it then, but I think it's really cool what she did now. And the restaurant actually, it's called Geeta Bhavan. My mom's name is Geeta. Google it. It's actually a big landmark, and a lot of people. So if you know anything about Hindi movies and so the Rishi Kapoor, Raj Kapoor, all of those guys, their studio was actually 5 minutes or is 5 minutes away from this, and they used to come and eat there all the time. So it used to be one of those, celeb haunts
Hangouts,
and whatever,
yeah.
the 60s or 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
whenever it was, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually quite famous even today. So that's, I think, the first to see that the method that she used and to see the logic behind why she did things and how she was. I think that is one first thing that stands out for me when you ask me the question. The second, and I think, so my grandfather, he passed away when I was 2. This is my dad's, my dad's dad. Sorry. I don't have too many memories of him, but the one thing that I can probably, and it's really, really, really fascinating. So he was blind, 100% blind in the left eye and 75% blind in the right eye. So I cannot for the life of me imagine how, and he had it from when he was fairly young.
Really?
Yeah. So I cannot for the life of me imagine what prompted him or what gave him the guts to do what he did. Because he was from Kerala, a small village by the coast. He saw a ship. Literally, this is a story, and I'm sure it's been added to over the years. But saw a ship. That sounds interesting. That time, Kuwait, lots of, especially Malayalis and lots of other South Asians, Indians, Pakistanis, all of them, Kuwait was the place to be. Found himself in Kuwait. A friend of his said, go, gave him the money, go and see what you can do. And then, blah, 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 10 years, 15 years later, he started his own business in shipping in India. I'm just thinking of just the guts, right? So when you have, maybe when you push yourself to a place of having nothing to fear, you're able to do something different, do something unique to make yourself stand out. I don't know. So he's definitely, for me, what I've heard of him, stories about him, of course, eternally grateful. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. And just a super, I mean, like, the power on my, and I think about this, the power on my glasses are like minus 1.75 and minus 2. I cry like a little baby when I don't have them. And my wife gets so annoyed with me. She's like, what's wrong with you? Like, and I'm just thinking, and I've seen his glasses, I've seen his stuff. Unreal. And to have that sort of willpower, determination, ability to do that. And at that time, from, India, he bought his first ship. He's probably one of the first private Indian ship owners in the world. You had the government of I guess, British India and then India having their own shipping companies and royal families. And
Monopolizing that,
yeah.
pretty much.
But
yeah.
he was probably the first private container ship owner in India. And that's just mind blown. And just to think about, and I wish he was alive because it would have been great to speak to kind of understand what he went through, what he thought about, and why he did what he did. So that's the second one. The third one, and of course my father and all of that, but the third one I'd like to speak about is our old managing director of the company, a gentleman called Mr. Kulas. His family's from the armed forces. It's a big mustache and he's a very proper guy. And
he has a presence in the room.
He has a presence in the room. He definitely has a presence. And I'm sitting in his cabin now. So I've inherited that from him, which is always cool. So he worked with my grandfather, worked with my father, and he worked, when I first came in, he was the guy that kind of, slapped me into shape when he needed to. And an amazing, amazing person, because I think a lot of what I get from him is what I, still try and imbibe today. A lot of clarity of thought, quick decision making, clear communication, or try to be, communicate clearly, and empathy for people. Like the amount of people he is, and we found out after he's retired now, he's in New York now, he's enjoying life. After he retired and left, the amount of people that he helped out, which we found out, was he was just like an amazing part of the community here. He found time for people. He did all of that. So, I mean, just so many different things about him as well. So I think he is my first, work mentor, so to speak. I told you a bit about my mom's mom, my dad's father. Father, of course, goes without saying. Yeah. Sounding board, he's still, I think we can get on each other's nerves a bit, but for me, primarily, he is the sounding board for me. Certain friends that I do have within a smaller group, a couple of them. I'm also very lucky to be part of an organization called YPO, and I have a forum that I'm part of, so them. And lastly, Upasana, my wife, who I actually confer with a lot, like a hell of a lot. And she's able to be super honest and super open with me, which I think even my father and all, I think he is, but it's always a bit different. I think with your spouse, it's entirely different. And she's able to just call out my BS and put me back on the right track. So those are, I guess, my go-to people and mentors.
It's a good list and a growing list, probably, right? As you keep going, you keep finding more.
Yeah, for sure.
I was telling you before I started this podcast, this is my selfish way of bringing mentors into my life as well. Give them a mic.
And they can keep talking and rambling on about.
No, dude, it's up to everyone else to take their own message, right? Yeah. So like two things from what you said before is you wonder what it would be like to talk to your grandfather when he was there.
For sure.
My father's story is a bit similar, minus the starting his own thing. He found himself at the age of 17, with his dad passed away, close to a dock where his friends were like, "Hey, we're going to this place called Abu Dhabi. This is a cargo ship. We hide in the bunker.
That's amazing.
Near the engine room, and we're gonna sweat all the way, but we're gonna get to somewhere new. And you want to come?
Wow.
Sure. Overnight decision, just kind of get here, land. There's a cops and their dogs sniffing around, seeing there's no illegal occupants on the ship. This is 70s again. Yeah. They hide in the steam room for as long as they can in the engine room and run to the nearest mosque and start a new life. Right. So there's this point where pain becomes a gift, and it's going to sound mean to say, because like a lot of people go through a lot of pain, but
sure.
I don't genuinely feel too bad for people who went through a lot, because I know that there's a gift that came with it.
Yeah.
And with my dad in particular, I know that's true. But the other thing is, if you talk to someone like my dad, maybe your grandfather, tell me this is right or wrong, they won't be able to tell you what they did.
Yeah.
They were just doing. Yeah. They were just going. They were driven by the pain of the fear of not doing it.
Yeah.
And just doing it. So in hindsight, they can tell you like, oh, I probably did this. Why? But it's not like...
I can see that. Yeah, I can definitely say from whatever I've heard of him, I completely get what you're saying.
Yeah. Like my dad till today is very quiet about what he did. Every few years we find a news story. It's like, you went to what? Afghanistan to sell pearls? when did you have time to do all of this, right?
But it's also, I think that's the biggest thing, right? I think the humility that like your father has and like maybe my grandfather or whatever, that's something that's so amazing. I find like the people who've actually done a lot, they just shut up and do it and move on, right? It's not something that you need to like make noise about and this and that. And if people know, they know. Yeah. And that's I think the beauty of it, right? And that's just the amazing part of such stories.
Yeah. I think there was an example. I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast and Terry Crews was on it. And he's giving this example that if you walk up to Bill Gates and you tell him like, hey man, you're broke. What's he going to do? He's just going to smile. Yeah. Bill Gates like, he doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, right? He's like, I've done the work.
Yeah.
What else do you need? Like, you can say anything about me, counter or for. I'm just going to smile and shrug either way. I have nothing to prove. And the other thing is that generation was built differently too.
I completely agree.
We are.
I literally, no.
Yeah, they are. I know what they were saying when they looked at us and be like, you guys are different. Like,
Exactly. A little bit.
So outside of mentors, when you're your mentor yourself, when you're mentoring yourself, so let's talk about personal growth. How do you make sure that you are being your best self and you're providing the most value to your company by being the best at your role or what your responsibilities are? What kind of work do you do on yourself?
So I think it's a fairly new concept for me. Till maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, I was just living life, really. Going through, going through the motions a bit. I have work, I have this, I have that. Come back home, eat, drink, sleep, repeat. Nothing too different, nothing too, cerebral about anything. But I think one of the biggest changes that I've constantly been working on is just taking care of myself a little better. I find that, so I work out 2-3 times a week with a trainer because I'm still lazy. But I find that that's made a big difference because it's a lot of discipline. I just know, I landed back to the UAE a couple of days ago. I still worked out. I've done 2 workouts this week. I have one tomorrow. It just brings you back to, I guess it centers you a bit. So that's something that's really helped me out a lot in focusing on myself a bit. I don't do any of these meditation and yoga. Maybe I should. I don't know. But I think that's one thing. And then the other thing I've done a lot, and that I find that helps me a lot, is I love listening to podcasts.
Tell me about some of your faves.
So there's a lot of kind of these leadership ones. There's names are superb right now and they're escaping me completely. I will think of them. They will come to me.
They're on your iPhone.
They're on my iPhone. So if I turn it around, I'll find them. But that's something that I enjoy. The other thing is I've actually been, and I always like reading a lot of biographies, I guess. Yeah, autobiographies. No, which are the ones they write about themselves?
Biographies. Autobiography.
Whatever.
Yeah.
One of them, whatever. Biographies, autobiographies.
Yeah.
So I've loved reading them. So
Which ones stick out for you?
So Losing My Virginity is one of them. Richard Branson. Okay. I think that's been something that I've read cover to cover 10, 15 times.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
It's on my cart. It's on my Amazon cart.
It's a really cool book because growing up, he was the guy, right? He was like the cool, everyone knew him. No one knew what he did. But like, the guy's a cool guy. But just certain things from that book sticks with me in terms of even, people skills, empathy, having the guts to kind of do things, not overthinking necessarily, planning, but not like overthinking. Those are all of them, I think, that I mentioned a little bit from him as well. So one of my sports people one of the sports people that I admire is actually a cricketer, so MS Dhoni, from a leadership perspective. So I heard a book, which is basically different chapters about his life. It's called The Dhoni Way. It's a bit narcissistic and a bit of MS Dhoni praising himself. Whoever wrote it praising Dhoni a lot. But some of the stuff you heard from it are also really, really interesting because I find like that guy he's just a weird guy. Like he's just different. And it's something about the way he is. Like if you've noticed, so he's won a few trophies in his life and championships and stuff. If you go back and Google pictures of him, there's the team with the trophy and then there's him in the background. And like to be that, I don't know, it's almost like there's detachment and there's a self of, like what you said about your father, for example, someone who's done it. They've done it. They're not going to go and like, it's about me. Here's the picture. Here's this. Here's that. Play the game. Done. Guys are happy. Team's happy. Psh, I'm out. What's next? Or, I'm happy. Like there's a picture where he won one of these Indian domestic things, his IPL titles a couple of years ago. Literally, entire team, like fireworks and going off and blah, blah. And you have this guy in the background with his like 5-year-old kid or 2-year-old kid holding her, like completely off frame. So to be that, and that's also a big challenge in business, right? Emotional attachment to your business versus realizing it is a business. And yeah, you have emotions around it, but how to find the balance between being overly emotional and making wrong decisions versus still being pragmatic enough to listen, be empathetic, do all of that, but still make business decisions. I keep drawing a parallel to him because he does what he has to do, quite ruthless on the field, changes the team, does whatever he has to. But at the end of the day, it's what you're doing and you still have to keep, So I don't know, something about the way he is. So that book really fascinated me. Then there was, again, I will think of the name and tell you. But these are just a couple of them that are coming to me now.
Can I ask you, what's the worst leadership book you've ever read?
Oh gosh.
I'll give you mine, then you can
Which
tell
one?
me yours. It's anything by Jim Collins.
Yeah.
The good to great guy.
I was going to say any of these like,
I'm sorry, Jim.
yeah, these like super.
It's really bad.
Yeah, these super like mumbo jumbo like phraseology.
Pseudo-scientific,
Yeah,
pseudo-statistical analysis
Yeah.
of like, it's
Can
like cherry picking
Yeah.
for success.
There's this famous Indian origin guy who used to appear on Oprah a lot, and I had a chance to listen to him earlier this year. Honestly, I don't
Fluff.
get it. Yeah, complete fluff. And the guy is, I mean, obviously he's maybe he's too smart for me. I don't know, but incredible, right? Complete 1 hour of fluff, and we had people, everyone, all of us. Honestly, all those around me were a bit like, huh, what's going on? But then I guess he's built his, whole thing. So all of these, like, I feel like overly, like all these fancy phrases and this and that. All of that sounds good on paper, but it's not really practical. Maybe it is, I don't know. But for me, it almost pushes me away from reading those books.
Yeah, every time. So when I'm really, I hardly try to read business books. I'm more like you. I'm into stories of people because their business becomes an extension of their personality, and you can pick up from that. If I go to like Kinukunaya, like a bookstore, if I see a chart or a graph explaining terminology about a leadership style, I'm like,
yeah, done.
You know, like if you've overthought about it to a point of over intellectualizing it, versus going back to the root basic, like, what were you feeling at the time you did this? Just tell me that. We have a common word for those. You don't need to come up with a word
exactly
for, being candid is a thing. And then you have a book called Radical Candor. And then you have like all these frameworks
exactly.
for how to be candid. It's
just
be candid. Just be
Shouldn't
candid.
be that tough, right?
Don't be an asshole. Be candid.
Exactly.
Like
be nice.
Be nice, be truthful, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We're on the same page with that. I have to pick up losing my virginity. I have no reason not to pick up it anymore. I'm going to ask you some selfish questions that I need advice. Patience. I have very little of it. Especially with making this work. So I have a business where out of survival phase where we have a good runway. If things were to shut down tomorrow, we're still like safe for a good amount of time until we figure something out. But every time I get to a phase and I'm planning for the next one, patience. Oh, that's going to take 2-3 years. Oh, it's going to take 10 years to do that. Oh, I don't, how do I calm myself? Like, I know you don't meditate and yoga, so please don't tell me to do that. No. I need another way to think about patience. What would you say to me?
I'm actually super impatient outside of work. And with work, it's almost inevitable that it requires me to be super, super patient because things take time. I don't know how I do it, to be honest.
It's a therapy session.
No. I need to now sit back. I need a couch.
Tell me about your father.
Honestly, I really have no idea. Maybe it goes back to the planning bit. Maybe it's linked to that. So when you kind of know, and you kind of realize that, it's going to take 5 years, but kind of I've worked through it. I've let it sit for a while. I've analyzed it. I've now realized, it's going to take 5 years. If I still want to do it, fuck it, I have to do it. And then maybe sit through whatever it takes to do it. Maybe it's that. I really don't know. Because from work, a lot of things, things take time. And especially in a established organization versus a startup where you can kind of maybe pivot a little easier. It's very difficult to move a running organization, right? It's super hard when you have people for years, processes for years and all of that. So maybe it's that. But personally, outside of work, I'm super impatient. Like I don't get angry as much as I did earlier, but I'm super impatient. Like if something's not happening, okay, next, like move to whatever else. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. Maybe it's to do with the planning part. Maybe it's just realizing it's what it is.
Yeah, because I'm like you. Outside of work, I am impatient. People need to be on time. You told me when I'm playing football, I'm impatient. Like you said, you would do this. You do this way. I'm telling you, we had a game plan. You're not following it. I'm impatient. Things that don't have that big consequences. Like we should have left early because I knew there was going to be traffic. I'm impatient. I don't know, you know. But when it comes to business, here's where I'm probably stuck.
Yeah.
And it was coming to me when you were talking is when we split our role between the business, my wife and myself, she has more access to daily wins, weekly wins, because her results depend on client results.
Sure.
If the clients are getting good results with the campaigns, she has something to celebrate.
Of course.
Like, that's my work, and that's the output. Yeah. Stuff that I'm working on operationally, business growth, architecture, laying the foundation for the next level.
Yeah.
There are no immediate wins. There's no gratification in the short term at all.
Sure.
So which kind of puts me in a bit more, I guess, a bit darker of a place where I can't, you know.
Yeah. I mean, find ways to celebrate wins, or to like recognize what a win is, right? Figure that out, because I can understand exactly what you're saying. Because a lot of it is behind the scenes stuff. It's, you know, doing
it's the unsexy stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think find ways to celebrate, find something to celebrate. You can't, because I think recognizing that that's equally important as the quote unquote the sexy stuff, I think is key. And somewhere that we all do it, and we kind of say, yeah, but that's just the back end work, and that's just this. But no, it's I think it's equally important, because one will not work without the other. And two, and I'm a big believer, like, find something that you think is a win and celebrate it. Like in our office, people think we're out of our mind. You come into the office, I think every single day of the week, there's something celebrating something going on somewhere in the office, because
I love it.
Having that small win celebration and recognizing that, and recognizing your team, recognizing yourself, to say that, listen, I've done this, you know, well done, not to let it get to your head, but it is a milestone, right? And again, maybe going back to the planning bit, it's all part of a certain longer term objective.
Yeah.
Possibly. And if it is, then why not celebrate it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a shift. So I've been in sales role for most of my life. Sales is the easiest celebration. Because you close a deal and your celebration right there. Or even when I did customer service or customer success and leading a team, when we stopped a customer from canceling, that's a win.
Sure.
So we had these wins coming in and out, and they had revenue numbers attached to every win too.
Sure.
So like there is good reason to celebrate every time. The stuff that I don't have revenue, so I have to change my thinking about, like, it's value, not revenue.
Exactly.
That we're going for. And maybe just jamming with you, that the reason Alina is able to celebrate these client wins is because of the architecture that I've helped in put my part into that, because this that we set up together has led to that in a certain way. So that I'm going to steal her wins. That's what I'm going to do.
Do it.
Not share, steal.
Steal it.
Not even share. But
it's true though. Like it's all the unsexy stuff that makes the sexy stuff happen, right? And I think maybe it's just recognizing that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always happy being a behind the scenes guy, so that's why I'm looking at things to try and find to celebrate. And the team does whatever they do, but I'm like trying to find that two things that I feel like, we've done it. But it is important to definitely do that, and that helps with the patience part. That helps with getting back on track. That probably helps with all of those things. At least I'm talking personal experience. Mm-hmm. It definitely helps to put you back in a right headspace to go forward as well.
Speaking of headspace, another thing I need advice with. So it's less now, but it still creeps up. Do you have an imposter syndrome ever? Do you ever look at other people and wonder if you're on the right path, if you're going at the right speed, if you are fit enough to do this for a long time? Do you have it in you to match? We have this competitive side.
Yeah.
But you look at people outside of your life and we eventually end up comparing ourselves. Do you have good control over that?
Yeah, I actually think I do. I think I'm very satisfied, if that's the right way. And I think I'm content. Maybe that's a better word. Satisfied is maybe not. But I'm actually very content in the way I am, my life, the way things are, whatever, from all different perspectives. So I've never, and especially from a work perspective, I just, maybe it's my personality, just do your own thing. So I don't really, I read about all these people and all of that stuff. I don't know.
But you're being true to yourself again then?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just how I am really. I think the effort, and we again spoke about it before about PR and stuff, and I was pretty candid, right, in saying what I said. But Yeah, maybe it's just that space of I'm happy where I am and I don't need to necessarily. I am who I am and I have a personality that is mine. And I know that I can be XYZ different ways from at work, but that's me. So I'm honestly, and it's not being cocky at all, but it's just I'm fine being who I am. I don't need to. Yeah, you try and pick up things from people, but it's nothing like I'm like, oh my god, I'm comparing. Can I do this? Can I? No, I'm on my own journey. I'm good, and I'll figure shit out on the way.
I struggled with it for a long time, and it's very unhealthy.
Yeah.
So I would mention to anyone listening that if you are doing it, recognize it. I was constantly comparing my circumstances to others,
Right.
as well, and not looking for the beauty in life. Right? Like you stop looking for beauty in life when you always are wondering, what if I could, or what if I had, or what if I were. And I'm still working on it. It's what I figured out. My trigger is being exposed to it too much.
Right.
Too much hustle porn.
Yeah.
Being overexposed to it.
Yeah.
It creeps in, but the moment I shut it off, I can go back in and find my center.
Yeah.
A bit more, but it's still shaky. And what I'm hearing from you is that it doesn't have to be that you're worse than them or better than them. And tell me this wrong. Not worse or better, but just different.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's about maybe also being a bit more in the moment than we find ourselves, because we're always looking at the next thing. Maybe just about being there, maybe it's that. I really don't know the answer, but yeah, it could be all of that. And again, like this Dhoni thing, and I said it earlier, right? You just won a trophy, your team's back after 2 years, you've done all of this, and what do? You're just playing with your kid.
I admire that. That would be my style.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be able to do that. I would love to be in that. Yeah, super in the moment.
Yeah,
happy, content.
Well, this generation, we're growing up with the expectation of being celebrities. Everyone, many celebrities in our life, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't wait to get the win because we want to show off about it, or be
I
recognized for it, or like be on a magazine cover. Or it's even if we don't want it, it's just conditioning has happened. Because that hustle porn has just gone to the next level.
Yeah.
It started early with Time Magazine and all those guys that started it before. And now it's gone to just another level. Yeah. And,
I'm literally like, when we have these like networking things and all of that, I'm the worst person in the room for that. Yeah. Small conversations in a small group, no problem. But any of those things where you need to like...
show yourself off.
I'm out.
Yeah. It's very, because I don't know if I'm more introverted than extroverted. I'm not like completely introverted, as you can tell. I'm talking to the camera. Are you like in that?
I think very
spectrum?
Similar. Yeah, because I think if people look at like my impression of you, maybe first impression of you, was you're not introverted, you're extroverted.
Yeah.
And I guess, and maybe you can correct me if you thought differently of me. But I think I know exactly what you're saying, because really speaking, you're fine, we do this, but I'm good.
To a certain limit, and then I need to recover. There's a recharge period.
Exactly.
That needs to happen.
Exactly. So I get that.
Yeah, I can play this role for a little bit, because it brings spice to my life. It's good.
Agree.
But then for a few days after this, don't talk to me.
I'm completely like that.
Yeah.
I'm like almost exactly like what you just described.
I can turn it on when I want to. Like, for God's sake, I used to be in sales. So it can be being like, hi, how's your service? Yeah. It's good. Wanna buy?
Yeah, please.
Discount? No. So and you have to,
I get it completely.
But I would hate going into like, let's say a golfing thing for, to pick up a client. I would would not want to do that, because then it's not true to myself. Right? So
it's true.
Man, this has been like such a journey within my mind, just this conversation.
Both ways, huh? Like even for me, just listening to some, honestly, I'm really enjoying.
No, but see, what I'm always looking for is perspectives, and I'm getting, it's always good to get different perspectives, but what I find with you is that I'm getting language for the perspective that is being developed in my own mind. Either I have it or it's being developed, and it's strengthening, and I don't think this should be the last time we talk about this kind of stuff. Because you're evolving, I'm evolving. I don't want to say that I figured it out ever. That's like and I think that's with you as well.
Yeah, and you never do, right? You always have to keep kind of figuring it out.
This is the system upgrade that's happening right now. It's uploading right now. But thank you so much. I'm conscious of time as well.
What is the time?
It is past 1:10. We can go on for another 2 hours.
I hope I did not
whole thing.
pour the daylights out of you or everyone else.
No, I think there's a very real element to the stuff you say. So it passes on, or it fits in so many different businesses. And I hope everyone can take away whatever, strikes a chord for you guys too. It certainly struck a lot of different chords for me. I want to do this again at some point. Awesome. If you're up for it.
Yeah. As long as, it sounds good when it's finally edited and done. And you're happy with the final product.
No, we'll see if you're happy with it.
No, man, this was fun. This was a lot of fun, man. Really, thank you so much, because I've never done this before.
Yeah.
I did it on a lark, really.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. So thank you for the opportunity, honestly. Yeah. And it's also given me a lot of time to reflect. Awesome. As I was trying to find my way through your questions, it gave me time to reflect on whatever I was saying as well. So I appreciate it, and thank you for sharing and inviting as well.
Oh, that sounds like music to my ears. Thanks for taking a chance on me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming to my first business.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you tomorrow night.
Yep. If we survive. Oh.
Thanks, man.
Woo!
Thanks
Done.
Again.
Thanks, man.
That was fun.